Hello and welcome to the Health Show. My name is DiBella and I'm your host. Today we have with us Dr. Flavin, and we're going to talk about off-label drugs. So welcome, Dr. Flavin.
Thanks, Sal, for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. So why don't we tell our audience a little bit about your background first.
Oh, how do you describe mad scientist, Sal? 56 semesters of education, 4 disciplines, 3 doctoral disciplines, and I'm now a professor teaching on a part-time basis at De Montfort University in England, where I fly up several times a year to give presentations on mechanisms involved in cancer therapies.
Okay. All right, so let's get right with the off-label drugs. Why do you use the off-label drugs?
Well, Sal, for years I didn't. I didn't really need them as much years ago. I would say that because of the fact that the patients were in the past very often so responsive to changing their diet and nutrition and nutrients, and we had a lot of remissions just on natural substances. But as the years went by, there was more and more contamination in the patients that I was finding that appeared to make the natural therapies not as strong as one needed, so I needed to give them boosters. And I found out that over the years that a lot of drugs that were used for other purposes were actually being found out to be helpful in cancer, and that they were actually supportive in cancer therapies, regardless of whether it was a natural therapy or conventional therapy. It would enhance the success rate in these patients.
Okay, so now off-label drugs, you can get them basically over the counter or maybe on Amazon, is that right?
Some yes, some no.
Okay.
It depends on the drug. Some of the drugs have to be prescription.
Okay.
There's a diabetic drug, metformin, that has to be prescription, and the patients need to know that they can only take this with food so that their blood sugar doesn't sink too much, but it actually helps to downregulate tumor growth and stop cancer stem cells, as well as decreasing the macrophages from coming into the tumor cells and helping the tumor cells to grow. So it has multiple mechanisms, but again, that has to be prescription. Other ones don't. There are other drugs that I use that were originally used for children with elevated lactic acid, and that is a drug that comes directly from the internet. And there are many other drugs. Many of them are prescription, however, just to point that out. And that's why it's very important that you have a physician working with you who knows what he or she is doing, and when they write the prescriptions, that they know how this works and what it does in order to support the cancer patient.
All right, so can you name these off-label drugs that you use in conjunction with the, say, chemotherapy or other, other treatments that are out there?
Sure. Well, some of the off-label drugs, for example, Tagamet, which everyone knows for the stomach, actually helps to raise the immune system. The immune system activity is not as helpful in chemo, but there are other drugs that work well in chemo. In fact, I have an entire list here, but I'll just skim through a few of them. I mean, even aspirin, which is over the counter, is very helpful in cancer. And I use low-dose naltrexone, which is an opiate receptor inhibitor, and that is prescription, but that was only recently found out. I can't say that recently, but it was recently shown how it worked. It's been used for over 10 years, but I was very skeptical about it because it did not have enough information. Now I know it helps immune system, so that's one that I give. The metformin is prescription. And believe it or not, we use sometimes doxycycline, which is an antibiotic, and we sometimes use an antiparasite, mebendazole. Mebendazole has a mechanism also in tumors in itself. So some of the compounds that I use that are prescription will not only affect the tumor itself, but very often we have accompanying pathogens like parasites or bacteria that are also helping tumors to grow. So very often what we're seeing is that if we give some of these other drugs for parasites or for bacteria, in addition, that we have a double hit on the tumor. It hits the tumor itself in certain mechanisms involved, but it also will affect the pathogens that are helping tumors to grow. So these are very interesting new studies that are actually showing that the patient's response to, for example, chemotherapy will be much better, or the response to immunotherapy will be much better. So it's a fascinating area, and this is what I'm giving to my patients. We're testing out with different substances depending on the type of cancer and depending on the patients and their background, of course, too. If they traveled all over the world, I automatically put them all on something for parasites because most of them have it. And if they have colon cancer, automatically they're put on something for parasites.
Okay, yeah, I heard parasites are an important thing to get rid of, and many people supposedly don't even know they have it, parasites, and they do. So how do you know if a person has breast cancer? How do you know what to give them? How do you determine, what works on them and what doesn't?
Well, that comes from over 40 years of research in cancer. First, I looked at all of the different cancers and what they had in common. And then I separated out the individual types of cancers. And so breast cancer is a little bit different in that it very often has heavy metals in it. And that's not just the deodorants with aluminum, it's also in our water, in our environment, etc., from amalgam fillings and so on. So we know to detox for heavy metals also in breast cancer as a first approach.
Okay, so what do you do for detox?
Well, it depends. There's two ways that I do it. Either I give zeolite, which is a cage-like structure that actually pulls out the heavy metals into the gastrointestinal tract. Or I do what Dieter Klinghardt used for years, and I've actually done it on myself and on my patients. We use coriander in the morning and chlorella in the afternoon. And the coriander pulls out the heavy metals into the hepatic circulation, and then in the afternoon the chlorella pulls out the heavy metals into the gastrointestinal tract so that they can be eliminated. Works quite efficiently. Recently, there's new data on foot baths, and I'm looking into this a little bit more. There's certain types of ionic foot baths that are supposed to be pulling out the heavy metals too, but until I get more data on this, I'm always very careful in recommending anything until I really get all the facts on it and can actually prove beyond a doubt that it's functioning, because there are just too many things on the internet making too many claims, and it's not fair to the patients. I want to make sure they get the best therapy.
Now, I heard you say at one point that one of our senators has a brain tumor,
Yes.
And you were trying to get in touch with him.
Correct.
Now, what would you recommend for him?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I have several glioblastoma patients anyway that are staying in remission. The most recent data really surprised me because of the fact that I didn't expect it. The researcher herself didn't expect it, but she's been working with this for quite some time. She's been working with methadone. Now, methadone is something that they give to drug addicts, which is a cheaper form of an opiate. What she found was a low dosage of methadone would actually help to keep certain chemos, like Timidor, which is one they use in brain tumors, Timidor in the tumor itself, and enhance the efficacies of the chemo without causing major side effects. And the patients are going into remission and staying in remission. It's amazing. And this is why this research is relatively new, but it's being tested on many patients, including a few physicians who had brain tumors, and it's been shown to be quite effective. That's why I wanted him to know that there is something out there, and that his doctors need to know that what they're showing is methadone is extremely helpful if they're using chemo, which they usually do, so that they can enhance the efficacies of the chemo and keep him in remission. And many patients have been in remission for several years already on methadone, which is, for me, it was a surprise, because I don't particularly like opiates. For pain, I don't give opiates. But for glioblastoma, it appears that this methadone was extremely helpful. I'm trying to talk Dr. Friesen into testing it with CBD oil, because we know that helps in brain tumors. And I'm already giving the patient Boswellia serrata, or frankincense, because that helps in any inflammation in the brain. But we shall see what she does on the CBD oil. She claims it will be counterproductive, but I don't know yet. So I'm trying to really talk her into testing it in vitro, because you can't always say from the pharmacology if two substances will negate each other or work synergistically by the mechanism. And sometimes you have to just test it out first to see, and I want it done in vitro, because I do not believe in taking any chances on any patients. I want to be sure 100% before anything's given to them.
Okay. So let's take, for an example, lung cancer and breast cancer and prostate cancer. Those are three different cancers that you see pretty often. So I think you just answered the question about the breast cancer, what you would give someone with a solid tumor. So can we go to colon cancer and lung cancer?
Yeah, colon cancer, as I said, is very, very often associated with a parasite, and also fungal infections. So what we do is we shift the patient's diet. Aspirin actually helps in colon cancer too. I had a colon cancer patient in New York, and I sent him to a colleague who is one of the top parasite specialists for the United Nations. And he's actually in New York on Fifth Avenue. And sure enough, he found an amoeba in this patient. And very often they don't find them if they don't keep looking, because if you only take one stool sample, for example, it's not enough. And my colleague said, no, you need to do more samples. I understand why, too. He said sometimes the parasites will actually they will lay eggs, and then they may leave, and the eggs are still there, and then the next cycle will come, and so you don't pick them up right away. So he's very good, Dr. Cahill, and I don't know if he's retired or not yet, but he really knows his stuff. And colon cancer, again, as I said, you need to cut the inflammation. You need to treat for parasites. You also need to absolutely change the diet. No red meat. It stimulates the tumor growth much too fast. I basically shift the patients over to more of an alkaline vegetarian diet, and it really makes a difference there. That helps in all the cancers, basically. But lung is a little different. In lung, actually, I've had to use an off-label drug called statins, which I don't particularly like. They're a cholesterol drug, and it has nothing to do with cholesterol. Brain tumors, however, feed off of cholesterol, but I don't give them statins either. I have a whole list of natural substances, and we'll discuss that later in cholesterol, that can lower cholesterol in the blood to help to reduce feeding a brain tumor. But in lung cancer, we found that statins hit another pathway in their tumor growth. And I actually used that in a stage 4 non-small cell lung cancer in combination with coenzyme Q10, because it does lower it in the heart. And we used metformin on her. We used cyclophosphamide, which is actually a chemo, but at low dosages, it's an immune stimulant, which was quite amazing. So she received a myriad of things along with curcumin, along with frankincense. So it's a combination of natural substances, off-label drugs, and chemical substances that are basically natural. that will work together synergistically to make sure that we can stop this tumor in its tracks, get the immune system back on its feet again, and start moving the tumor out of the body. And it does. And I just put out a new blog today about putting the crab in the cage. What a lot of my colleagues are thinking is that cancer needs to be healed, not destroyed. And that we need to do is to heal the body, and the cancer will eventually start to go away because the immune system's functioning. We're seeing this now. We're seeing this in our patients. But because of the fact that many patients still opt for an additional chemotherapy or radiation, and radiation, it can be very helpful at pinpoint radiation, I still give them a good support system to make sure that they will get the best of both, and that we can get rid of the tumors without destroying their immune system and get them back on their feet again and keep them in remission afterwards. So that's all part of the detox, the nutrient support on these patients for specific nutrients that work at major areas in tumor cells. I never believed this before. I used to think that herbs and spices and foods were just something for our daily meals. I never realized that they can also be anti-cancer.
Mm-hmm. Especially if they're organic.
Well, they have to be organic. I'll tell you, Dr. Senna from MIT has published quite a bit of data on glyphosates in the pesticides and in the Roundup. And what we're finding, unfortunately, is that it's hitting more pathways than we realized. And initially, it was thought that it didn't interfere with any human metabolism, but we're now finding out that it's interfering with many of the pathways in human beings, including the sulfur pathway. And sulfur is really important in cancer patients and in health in general. And that's in broccoli or cauliflower or what are those little ones that I hate? The ones that my mother always burned. Come on, Dana. I'm just flashing back on these tiny little things. I can't think of the name of it. They call it Rosenkohl in Germany. But anyway, they're like mini cabbages. And so all of these things help with sulfur in the body. I'm looking into MSM right now. I'm a very, very cautious scientist and physician with my patients. And I was concerned about MSM, that perhaps it could stimulate tumor growth, but what I'm seeing in the data right now is that it's actually helping in breast cancer. So I have to do more research on it to see, does it help in other cancers? I don't know yet, but it's basically putting back those sulfur groups that the glyphosates and the pesticides have destroyed. And the glyphosates and the pesticides are destroying our immune system by destroying our gastrointestinal bacteria. Now, if you've asked me 20 years ago, what did I think about the gastrointestinal bacteria? I would just say, well, it's in transit. It doesn't do anything. Not true. And what we're finding out, that it's extremely important for the immune system. So this is why my patients are on probiotics. This is why my patients are on organic foods. And slowly but surely, we're replacing the bad bacteria with good bacteria to help to get the immune systems up. And it's working. It's working well.
Mm-hmm. You talked a little bit about radiation. Now, I know a few friends that one had cancer of the tonsil, and the other one, the other few people that I know had prostate cancer. The person that with the tonsil, cancer of the tonsil, he was a thoracic surgeon, a good friend of mine, and he had radiation to the chest, and he went into remission. I mean, so at first, years ago, you heard a lot of different things about radiation, but he's still alive today. He's about 25 years out. And the second one was and the third and fourth one that had prostate cancer, they took the seeds and got they took radiation in the seeds. Now, they're still healthy today and around and kicking. And Mayor Giuliani, many years ago, I can't remember how many years ago, from New York, he did the radiation. And he's still healthy. So could you comment a little bit about the radiation and the seeds and all of that together?
Well, the radiation therapy, the thing that's very interesting about radiation therapy is that if it's directly applied to the tumor, your results are usually pretty good because the tumors cannot defend themselves at all against radiation. So if you've got a seed, for example, in a prostate tumor, and it's sending out radiation to that prostate tumor, it can't protect itself. If you do pinpoint radiation, for example, on a tonsil area, you are getting very good results. The problems are, and the proton and radiation therapy, which is unfortunately horrendously expensive, but also very effective. I had a colleague that had prostate cancer, and they used that. I think that was in Arizona, and that completely disappeared. That was really amazing. And brain tumors also, they're using proton therapy. But as I said, it costs $20,000 to $30,000. So a lot of people, in fact, most people can't afford it. This is something where the regular radiation, the pinpoint radiation, can be incredibly helpful, both in destroying the tumor, especially if it's a localized tumor. Now, the problems come in if you have spreading tumors. And this is one of the problems that I see in breast cancer, that they don't hit the breast tumor. What they do is they radiate the entire area. And this can cause a lot of problems later on in fibrosing in the lungs and blockage in the lymph glands and all of the rest of the business. So this is why there are variations in radiation. The ones you're talking about are direct local radiation therapies that are really effective. The ones that are the problem are the ones that are more broad, where they go too deep. For example, in non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, sometimes they use radiation that can actually damage the heart, and if it's too deep. So this is a broad radiation. Dr. Charles Myers at the National Cancer Institute many years ago published many articles on nicotinamide enhancing the efficacy of radiation, but not enhancing the toxicity. So all my patients that go into any radiation therapy, and I don't care if it's a local pinpoint radiation or if they insist on following their doctor's orders and going for general radiation for a whole breast cancer area, I always put them on nicotinamide. I put them on about 1 gram about 3 hours before the radiation therapy, because that will increase the oxygen in the tumor cells and make them much more sensitive to radiation therapy, but it will not affect normal healthy cells.
Right. So these people that I know that did go through the radiation, they also went through hormone treatments where they, I guess, injected women's hormones into them to, I guess, trick the cancer into not growing?
Well, it depends on which type of cancers you're talking about.
Prostate cancer.
Okay, in prostate cancer, they usually give hormone blockers to block the testosterone. That's kind of an interesting story, in that the problem with these inhibitors for the testosterone is that only certain cells in the prostate tumors are responsive to testosterone, and it isn't the testosterone itself that's causing these tumors to grow. Excuse me, it's a hydroxylated testosterone. So the hydroxylated testosterone is hydroxylated from estrogen mimetics. For example, in plastic bottles, we have estrogen mimetics. Soft plastic has BPAs in them that act like estrogen, and they will cause an increase in hydroxylation of testosterone. That will cause hair loss, and that will cause prostate tumors to grow. So not a good idea. The hormone blockers work for a few years in prostate cancer. But only for a few years, because then those cells that have other receptors other than the testosterone receptors, they will grow. I use something totally different. I can also lower testosterone with a fungal drug, which I sometimes do. But we also try to detox from bacteria. Many of the prostate tumor cells have bacteria in them that are helping them to stay alive and that are changing the environment around the tumors. So we do a whole myriad of things. This doesn't mean they shouldn't take the hormone inhibitors themselves. They're helpful, but in combination, we find that we don't just get remission, we get cures. And that to me is even more important. So whether a patient wants to go conventional medicine plus natural medicine or just natural medicine, we have to look at the whole story in each patient, and we have to see, and we have to make sure that they're properly treated. I get very concerned about people that say, oh, well, you don't need any conventional medicine at all, blah, blah, blah. Some patients don't, but I don't like to take that chance with my patients. I like to make sure that they're getting the best of both worlds and that they're getting really everything that they can receive to not just put them in remission, but to actually get rid of that cancer.
Okay. So getting back to this friend of mine that had the cancer in the tonsil, one thing I noticed about him when I visited him at home is that he had a big tank of oxygen, and he couldn't eat because the radiation was so bad in the tonsil that he had really a sore throat. And he drank, and he basically took a lot of oxygen. So do you think maybe the oxygen might have helped him also?
Oh, absolutely. Tumors hate oxygen. They really hate oxygen. And the thing is, what I do is if the patients are on oxygen, I also make sure they don't get oxygen radicals, that their bodies are protected. Their bodies are protected with natural substances that are in broccoli, in garlic, and so on, onions even. So those in regular foods are helpful. The oxygen therapy is, in my opinion, a real godsend because it definitely helps to increase the oxygen in those tumor cells. And as I said, they don't like oxygen. And this is why there are many therapies that will increase oxygen in tumor cells. Vitamin C infusions, for example, will increase hydrogen peroxide in tumor cells, and that will increase oxygen, and those tumor cells will either fall apart or they will at least get weakened. So the vitamin C therapies have been very, very helpful in that regard. But there are ozone therapies too that some colleagues have used. I don't use it myself, but I know that it can be also helpful.
Right. I've heard of ozone therapy. I don't know how they use it. What other types of off-label drugs do you use on disease?
Okay, as I said, sometimes it depends on the disease. Sometimes I use dipyrimidol. It's actually a drug used in neurology. Dipyrimidol I use for triple-negative breast cancer, and I'm just reading this here. It actually works on an inflammatory pathway. It's the adenosine pathway, and so it appears to be helpful. As I said, I give. Well, I'll read through the list here so you can see some of the things that I'm giving. Sometimes we give Someta, which is a bisphosphonate. Now, Someta, most people think of that are colleagues of mine say, oh, well, that's just if you have osteoporosis. That's not true. Someta is now being found out. It's a bisphosphonate that helps to put calcium back into the bones. But we found out that what it also does is it helps to get those, they're called macrophage 2s. They're the bad guys. And the macrophage 2s are in tumor cells and help tumor cells to grow. We found out from the literature and from a lot of research that Someta will actually help to push those macrophages out of the tumor cells and stop the tumors from growing. It's a very interesting work. I'm doing this right now in a pancreas cancer patient. I try to talk my colleagues into giving this to him because I want him to have this. And a lot of the clinics won't follow what I say because they don't do research. And I do research, and my patients get well, and their patients get buried. And I really am sick and tired of this. It's time to get more patients healed. We do use CBD oil, um, but not always. And it's not allowed in Germany. It's allowed in England and in America and many of the states. CBD oil, you don't need a lot of the THC in there at all, in fact. CBD oil is a hemp oil that actually works on inflammation on the tumor cells. So it's very helpful in cutting down inflammation on tumor cells.
I had a doctor that talked about inflammation and cancer, inflammation and disease. Now, would you say that the CBD oil is the best you can use for inflammation?
Well, no, not necessarily. In fact, basically speaking, there's at least a half a dozen substances that work against inflammation, and very often, if they're combined, you get much better efficacy. Aspirin works on inflammation. Curcumin works on inflammation. Boswellia serrata or frankincense works on inflammation. Palmitoyl ethanolamide works on inflammation. That works on special receptors, inflammatory receptors. CBD oil works on inflammation. So as you see, there's a myriad of things that work on inflammation that when they're combined, you're really down-regulating that stimulus for tumor growth because they don't have that inflammatory parameter anymore.
Right. You recommended to me for pain this product here. I combine this with like 5 other herbs that I take. I have, as you know, spondylolisthesis, which is a lower back problem that is pinching the nerve. And this is amazing, this product. And the name is abbreviated for PEA, and it's worked for me. I mean, so if anybody wants to know what I'm using for my nerve pain and numbness of the foot and all of that, you can contact me at DiBella, 2, @gmail.com, and contact me, and I'll send you the list of what I'm using to deal with the pain that I have. And this product here it's amazing, and you can get this on Amazon.
Right. You know, that's the thing that unfortunately, because of the fact that it is not a prescription drug, most of the doctors don't know about it. I use for nerve pain, especially my cancer patients on Taxol or any other drugs that are affecting the nerves. I use a combination of palmitoyl ethanolamide, or PEA, and alpha-lipoic acid and vitamin B1. And we do that when we use dichloroacetate in our cancer patients. Dichloroacetate's a drug for children with elevated lactic acid, but it works in cancer. But it has a side effect, and that's a little bit of numbness and tingling. So I've always used alpha-lipoic acid, which has anti-cancer activities anyway, but it's anti-inflammatory. It's a sulfa. And palmitoyl ethanolamide is amazing because it actually works on what they call the anandamide receptors on the membrane, and it helps to build up at the membrane anti-inflammatory substances that will help to downregulate inflammation in the membrane and in nerves. So it's fabulous stuff.
Do you need a prescription for that?
No, you don't. Isn't that great?
Yeah, that is great. So what is the name of it if you went to get it online, say, for instance?
Well, they call it PEA, but make sure you're looking at palmitoyl ethanolamide. It's an amide. It's one of the amide groups. It's an anandamide.
And the other product you mentioned?
Alpha-lipoic acid is also available online or at many nutrition stores.
Okay. So it
And vitamin
works.
D,
It
everyone
works.
knows.
In combination with all the other stuff I'm taking, it works to get
Oh,
rid
I
of
know.
the.
Yes.
But you have to
Isn't
take it every day. You cannot get off it for 1 or 2 days because.
Well, see, it's a short-acting anti-inflammatory, and it's non-dangerous, non-toxic. There's no side effects. It can't hurt you,
Right.
and it only helps, and it's a natural part of your own body, but it's broken down very quickly. There is a trick on that. You can take Advil to prolong its effectiveness, but I'm not that wild about Advil. It's naproxen, and naproxen will actually downregulate the fatty acid breakdown of it. But if you can take it 3 times a day and cut down your pain, have no side effects, and not have to be on codeine or morphine, so many patients in America are on opiates. It's a disgrace, and it's really messing up their immune system, and it's causing them to be psychologically altered also. That stuff definitely hits the brain. PEA doesn't. PEA is a very safe substance. Do you know what else it does, by the way?
What
Just
else?
for your information. Palmitoyl ethanolamide actually helps to downregulate mast cells. Now, mast cells are the ones that release histamine in asthma. However, mast cells are also activated in cancer. And so palmitoyl ethanolamide actually helps to downregulate the histamine influence in cancer too. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Okay. Now, can we go to another subject, cholesterol? What is the off-label drug that you would say is the best for cholesterol?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, it's not a drug. Well, I don't know if you call it a drug. I actually have a whole list that I wrote out because I finally did a blog on it for my website, Complementary Alternative Cancer with Dr. Flavin. That's on my Facebook, and then for my website, I have it on my website too. But what I found out was, I found out that there are certain receptors in the liver, and the reason I was looking at this was because brain tumors like glioblastoma use cholesterol, and cholesterol helps other tumors to grow because it increases a gene called the RAS gene, RAS gene. So I've looked at fish oil for years because that downregulates the enzyme in the liver that makes cholesterol. That's called HMG-CoA reductase for anybody who's in biochemistry. But basically speaking, fish oil downregulates the synthesis of cholesterol. I found out just recently, oh, this knocked my socks off. You know what raises cholesterol?
What is that?
Pesticides.
Say that again?
Pesticides, glyphosates, Roundup.
Okay.
It raises cholesterol because it blocks the sulfation of cholesterol. It also blocks the sulfation or sulfation of vitamin D. So I found out that pesticides can increase cholesterol, but what can lower cholesterol? One of the drugs that some people use is red yeast rice. Red yeast rice is actually a downregulator of cholesterol, but broccoli lowers cholesterol. And how does it do it? It sulfates it. Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
and
but
all the broccoli, good old broccoli, and fish. The taurines in fish lower cholesterol, and nuts. Nuts will lower, like we know walnuts lower cholesterol, so nuts will lower cholesterol. There is a drug that comes from magnolia plant called Honokiol, Honokiol. I'm not that familiar with it, but there's a lot of data on it that it lowers cholesterol. And the rest are citrus fruits, like grapefruit and oranges, and even tomatoes will lower cholesterol. And good old oatmeal. Good old oatmeal. You know how they always used to advertise oatmeal, good for your heart, etc.? Well, it is. It actually lowers cholesterol, but try and get it gluten-free because the oatmeal's even changed. So things like oatmeal and barley and beans and nuts, apples, grapes, fatty fish. The fatty fish help with because they have more omega-3 fatty acids. So these are all the things that actually lower cholesterol. So we can, and marine algae. Now this knocked my socks off. You know, I've been looking at what makes us old and what keeps us young. And one of the things I found was that the algae, the Japanese eat a lot of the algae. and it helps to stimulate stem cell turnover. Well, it also lowers cholesterol. However, I'm worried right now about our oceans because of all the contamination of PCBs and BPAs and all the rest of the chemical substances, not to mention Fukushima and all the radiation in our algae, that I'm beginning to see that the whole world is having a lot of problems because all the things that will keep us young, that will elongate the telomeres, that will help cells to live longer, that will increase stem cell turnover. A lot of these things are contaminated. The soy, for example, soy is really good for helping in with your stem cells and telomeres and lowering cholesterol, but it's mostly contaminated utilizing the GMOs, and the GMOs will also mess up your gastrointestinal tract. But this is the thing: we're trying to find good organic food that is going back to the basics, that's healthy food, that hasn't been manipulated either with gene therapy or with pesticides.
You know, talking about red yeast rice, I remember years ago, it's got to be over 10 years ago, that there used to be lovastatin in a red yeast rice. And the pharmaceutical companies made a big to-do about they're using it as a drug, and they took it out. So what I could remember from years ago, there's no lovastatin anymore in the red yeast rice.
Right. Well, the thing is, the levels were probably so low that it wasn't having any of the negative effects that the statins were having. The thing is, it's a real problem if you have something. Well, here's one big problem in any substance that works pharmacologically in a disease. If it's claimed as working as a medicine, then they won't allow it. It has to be tested. And if it's something that's really inexpensive that's available to anybody, then no one wants to pay for the testing. You see the problem?
Right, but the thing is, they use lovastatin. I mean, that's a statin drug.
I don't like the statins because they increase dementia, they increase brain fogging, they lower the CoQ10 in the heart. You don't need the statins. Just look at my blog on complementary alternative medicine with Dr. Flavin on Facebook, and you'll see the blog on there about what the devil you can take instead of the statins. You don't have to have the statins, and you don't need those side effects. If you lower CoQ10 in the heart, in fact, there's actually a patent. This was told to me by a colleague of mine. He said there is a patent on statins in combination with CoQ10, but they didn't want to bring it out because they didn't want people to realize that it could actually do something negative, and it can. And so if you can avoid the statins and exercise more, change your diet, get off of pesticides, and make sure you're eating organic, you can start shifting your cholesterol in your body anyway and start eating walnuts for snacks and so on. Then, broccoli at night with your food, et cetera, and all of these things will help to downregulate your cholesterol and help you out so that you don't need to have any of these synthetic drugs. That's the thing. I'm a pharmacologist. I'm not against synthetic drugs. But if you can avoid a synthetic drug that has side effects that are unpleasant, dangerous, or deleterious to your health, then why not go the natural way to have substances that will save your life, make you healthy, and have no complications?
I interviewed Dr. Sinatra, it has to be maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and he said he's a cardiologist, and he was very, very bullish on olive oil. He uses olive oil all the time, and he uses as much as he can.
I know him. He's right. I know him. My patients are allowed 2 types of fats. Well, actually 3. They can have a little bit of ghee, which it's clarified butter, but only a little bit, because that increases butyric acid in the body, and that's good for you. They can have olive oil, and the best is the the olive oil that's non-filtered, the fresh olive oil that my friends, I'm living in Germany, my friends drive down to Italy and get it all fresh pressed, cold pressed virgin olive oil, and it's still all cloudy because it has all of those wonderful antioxidants in it. You can use olive oil even on your face and everything else because it's so fantastic. But olive oil is a monounsaturated fatty acid, so it doesn't stimulate tumor growth. It does not cause clogging in the arteries, and it's extremely healthy. And the other oil I allow is coconut oil, because coconut oil is a whole different type of fatty acid, and the coconut oil actually helps in cancer. It helps when patients are cachexic. That means they're losing so much weight. I put them on coconut milk for cooking. Because coconut oil can take higher temperatures, I have them use coconut oil for higher temperatures because of the fact that it's a very healthy oil, very high in selenium, and it's very good for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now can we talk a little bit, I know you're writing a book. Can you just share with us a little bit about what's in the book and how far you're with the book? And I know you have a non-for-profit company, organization that takes contributions, and would be a good idea to talk about it, so this way maybe you can get some funding that you need for the book.
That would be a godsend, Sal. The book is, the first draft is already written. What we need funding for is for editing and basically getting it out. The foundation is called COLLMED, COLLMED.org. And COLLMED.org was started by me in 2001 when my breast cancer patient was supposed to die in 3 months. She wasn't even my patient yet. She came to me and said, they gave me 3 months to live. I have metastases everywhere and in the brain, all over the brain. And I put her on Boswellia serrata, changed her diet, put her on a specific list of nutrients, and in 3 months she came back and had no more cancer. I was so shocked in 2001 that I started the COLLMED Foundation. It's actually the Foundation for Collaborative Medicine and Research because they collaborate with colleagues all over the world. What I want my public to know, both colleagues and patients, is what they can do. First of all, the patients themselves, what they need to do to get rid of the causes of the cancer, which are very often pathogens, heavy metals, and so on. So they need to know about the detoxing. But detoxing is only the first step. Then they need to know which nutrients they should take, which herbs that are helpful for them that they can take, and which spices, like curcumin, that will help to fight their cancers and help to get them alkaline. They need to know what diets are important, that they should avoid red meat, they should avoid sugar, they should avoid white flour, and why. I'm not going to go into heavy chemistry on this because I just want people to get well, and I want this to be a book that helps them to help themselves to get well, that's fun, funny, interesting, and really give them good, supportive, solid information so that they can help themselves. But I want to teach my colleagues too, because a lot of these oncologists out there have no idea about off-label drugs. They don't know what they do. They don't know they can actually help Mrs. Smith or Mr. Jones with their breast cancer or prostate cancer. They don't know that there are things that can be given to them that are off-label drugs that will help to put them into remission faster and keep them there. So these are things that I think are really important that I want to share with the public. I've devoted over 40-some years to this research and this work with wonderful successes. Just recently, stage 4B melanoma patient, she was given about 3 months to live, maybe less. She had been on interferon for 1.5 years and had gone from 3A to 3B, and they said, there's nothing else we can do, put your things together, you're going to die. And she was 42 years of age with a 12-year-old daughter, and she said, I want to live for my daughter, what can I do? So I put her on everything, including the off-label drugs and the low-dose naltrexone. For pain, I put her on PEA, et cetera, and by God, she has no more cancer. Sal, this stuff, it's amazing. But this is what I want in that book. And this is why I ask the public, please help me to help you. This isn't about me. This is about you. And this is not going to make tons and millions of dollars for me, believe me, but it will save millions of lives. And that's what it's all about. And that's why I took my oath. That's why I studied 56 semesters. And that's why I'm now a professor up at the university. I'm gratis, by the way. They don't pay me, but I give the information voluntarily to help the colleagues so that they know what they can do to help the patients. And so the patients know what they can do to help themselves. The data's out there. The information's there. But they're not being told this, and they must be told this. They need this. It's not fair for any patient with any cancer, regardless of whether it's a topical cancer that is a very simple one, like a basalioma, that can be treated with Aldara cream, just a cream instead of radiation or cutting, or whether it's a very intense pancreas cancer that we're working on right now with a whole new formula for helping to reverse these cancers. I get mostly stage 4, and Sal, I'll tell you, I turn almost every one of them around. We get 85 to 90% success with our stage 4 cancers, but only if they listen and start doing what they're supposed to do, and not when they've done everything, the tumors are all gone, and then what do? They go out and they start drinking, they start smoking, they start eating sugar, they start eating meat. You can't do this. It's a lifestyle change. It's a simple lifestyle change. It's not like you're turning into a raw vegan. It's not like that. What we're doing is we're shifting them over to a healthier diet. We're teaching them and helping to inform them so they know which foods will help to reverse their cancers, which things they need to do. I mean, even bathing in baking soda and Epsom salts. That helps to get rid of a lot of toxins in the body. Colonics, I used to think, oh, colonics, who needs it? Wrong. That helps to clean out the liver so that the liver detoxes and can get rid of these tumor cells faster in the body. So these are all the things that are going into my book. I want it simplified. I want it with nice pictures. I want it light and fun, and we'll have in a different color the heavy-duty, super heavy chemical pharmacology so that they can avoid it if they want to, or if they're scientists and physicians like I am, then they can look at that to say, aha, that's why Dr. Flavin, Professor Dr. Flavin, puts that on. That's why she gives that. That's why she gives this drug. Aha, she gives metformin. Oh, now I know why. Oh, she gives dipyrimidol in her triple-negative breast cancer patients. Now I know why. She's giving cimetidine, Tagamet. Why is she giving a stomach drug? What the heck's that doing? Because it's helping to get the immune system up. So these are the things that the colleagues need to know. I need it simplified, as they taught me once when I used to present medications. KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Don't make it complicated. Make it easy. Make it fun. Make it a learning experience that they're saving their lives and enjoying doing it.
I don't know if we mentioned this in the beginning, but you're an MD, is that right?
Yes, and I'm also a naturopath.
Okay.
And I'm a pharmacologist, and I'm a toxicologist, and I'm a biochemist. I don't quit. It's like someday I'll just drop dead, but I'll have more degrees than anybody I ever met.
Right. Now, if someone wanted to make a donation, how would they go about it?
Well, if they go on to CollMed, www.collmed.org, collmed.org, they'll see our donation site where you can click on that and go through PayPal and make a donation to the foundation, because that would be very, very helpful, because we need to help ourselves, our family, our friends, our children, our parents. We need to help all of them, and this will help every single one of them because it will give them the information that they need. I mean, if I were like some of the colleagues I know that say, oh, well, we have our secret things, so come to my clinic and pay me $30 or $40 or $50,000. I don't care about the money. The book will probably be not more than $14.99 maximum. And I want to have it so that the people have this, the public has this to help save their lives. So if they go on collmed.org and click on donation, they can donate for the book. And that will help us tremendously to get a good editor to make sure that it is done well and fun and easy and that it's accessible for everybody. I want everybody to be able to know what they need to do.
Now, if someone wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can go on CollMed also. On the website, we've redone the website, and my email address, drflavin@collmed.org, is on there. And so they can go ahead and click on email and email me if they want to email me. Very often my assistants will get it to screen them to make sure that it's not trying to sell a product so that we can just save lives instead of buying or selling products. That's what we want to do.
Is there anything else you want to bring out before we close?
Yeah, one thing. One thing that I have been in denial of for years, the emotional aspect of a disease. If anyone had told me 20 years ago that if somebody had been hurt as a child, abused as a child, or beaten as a child, or any horrible things that I don't even want to discuss because they're so awful, that I know have happened to some of my patients, and they are the hardest patients to help to get cured because they're fighting it themselves. And very often these patients need psychotherapy to help them to let go, to forgive, and to understand, and to move on in their lives. And this is something that I never realized, that the brain and the mind actually also control the body, and that's stress also. I have one patient who was abused as a child. She has a daughter who's genetically damaged, and her husband ran off when she got her diagnosis of cancer. And because of the child abuse, etc., that she had gone through, she really needs a lot of help in forgiving and letting go. And this isn't easy. The medications help, but they help even more if you want to get well. And some people are in a dichotomy. They don't know, do I want to get well or do I want to die? And Dr. Scheller said to me once, sometimes I'm not sure that cancer is an illegal suicide. And I said, Albert, how can you say that? And he said, I have some patients who have been so hurt throughout their lives that they just don't want to live anymore. And I said, well, I think what we have to do is we have to start, cheering them up, making them see that there's a lot of other things to life, and to make them realize that when they get well, they can help other people. And that is a blessing, because that gives a whole positive turn to something that was a negative, and it helps to save other lives.
Well, talking about stress, I've been helping people for over 25 years for free with the mind-body connection. I became a hypnotherapist maybe, I don't know, close to 30 years ago. And I've helped people with cancer take the stress, anxiety out of their life. And I made, many years ago, I'm selling all the tapes. They used to be called tapes, but they're CDs now, and I sell them on Amazon. That's all you have to do is go on Amazon and look under Sal DiBella, and all my DVDs and videos will come up. And what it talked about, I made a tape about chemotherapy, and I gave it to a number of people that chose to take chemotherapy at that time. Everybody was taking chemotherapy at that time. So I gave it to them, and you know what? They did better. They didn't vomit. They didn't get sick. It's amazing. And after thinking about it, I said, you know, if you hear all bad stories about chemotherapy, you hear about throwing up, you hear about losing your hair, you hear about maybe even dying from the treatment. But in the tape that I made for them years ago, I made them look at it as something coming in that's going to help their body. And it's amazing, the results. Now, I thought about it before I made it, and if you think about something that's going to hurt you, like in other words, if I came with a baseball bat and went to hit you with the baseball bat, you would brace yourself, your body would get stiff, you would get stressed. I made the tape where you'd welcome the chemotherapy into your body. And it's amazing how many people did well with just the chemotherapy and no other treatment. And, you know, does it have something to do with the tape that I made? You know, or would they have gotten better anyway from it? Not all kinds of cancer did this work on the chemotherapy at the time, the people that I worked with, but there are a good amount of people that took chemotherapy that listened to this tape that I made to them as they were getting the treatment in Sloan Kettering in New York. And they did tremendously better than the people that didn't. So once again, you can get them on Amazon.
Sal, may I put them in my book under the chapter on stress and emotion?
Sure.
Absolutely, because this is really important, and this is something that people also need to know, that there are many ways of turning around a cancer and responding to therapies, and the emotional aspect and your tapes will be extremely helpful for them so that they can walk through this knowing that this is not the end of the world and this is not a torture. It's something that's actually going to try and help their bodies by getting rid of the bad guys and letting the good guys live.
Right. So I want to thank you, Dr. Flavin, for being on the Health Show once again, and we look forward to seeing you again another time.
Thanks, Sal. It's been a real pleasure, and congratulations on all that you're doing on your fantastic videos.
Thank you. So there you have it, Dr. Flavin. Go to her website, make a donation. I mean, she's got a lot of good information that she wants to share with a lot of people. So once again, thank you for being on the Health Show and joining us here, and we'll see you again the next time. Thank you.